Our next speaker today is Ed Hatton. He is known as the Sage Mentor from his column in Entrepreneur magazine and program on Platinum Gold Internet Radio. He has mentored and trained thousands of sales teams and entrepreneurs in sales strategy and tactics while showing his clients how to blend business, marketing, and sales strategies so as to achieve greater heights. He is a strategist, facilitator, writer, and international speaker who has worked with large and small enterprises and NGOs to craft and deploy far-sighted implementable strategies. He sits on the board of advisors of the Northwest University Enterprise Develop Incubator and consults to Regent Business School. Blind Spots shows the parallels between the progression of his failing sight and the blind spots that most salespeople experience from time to time, and how they can snatch away dreams, and then shows how to overcome these. There are vital lessons to be learned here. I suggest you focus your mind, sharpen your concentration, and use all your listening skills as we welcome Ed Hatton.
Good morning. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning where I sat sipping my breakfast coffee, and I picked up my phone to check my messages, and I couldn't see them. They were a blur. And I realized with horrified finality that the degenerative eye disease that had been eating away at my sight for several years had finally stolen the last of my ability to read. And that had profound implications. It meant I couldn't read books. I couldn't drive. It was unsafe to cross streets. It had all sorts of massive life-changing effects on me. But you know, that wasn't the bad news. That isn't the bad news. The bad news is that you, if you are responsible for generating an income, whether you be a coach or a carpenter or a salesperson or an entrepreneur, you may have some vision diseases. Not of your real eyes, I hope. I hope they work perfectly. But you may have some diseases of those eyes which allow you to visualize your dreams and show whether you can achieve your dreams, to see the opportunities and threats. And I'm going to concentrate on just three of those. The first one is myopia, short-sightedness, where you can see everything that's close by very, very clearly, but you can't see anything that's in the future, that's far away. The second one is cataracts, an eye disease which means that your sight gets blurry and unfocused, and this happens to people who sell as well. And the third one is macular degeneration, what I have, where you have holes in your vision and you can't see what's right in front of you. Let's look at them in turn. First of all, myopia. Myopia affects lots and lots of people who sell. We all know what we're doing. We know our customers. We know their problems. We know our products. We know the markets. We know everything. We're in our comfort zones. And don't we just love comfort zones? But comfort zones are dangerous things in this day and age. Because there might be something coming down the track that you're not seeing. Let me give you an illustration. One of my sales team came to me and said, please help me. I'm trying to close up a contract for IT services, training services, and I've been battling and I can't get this closed. Will you help me? So I said, sure. So we went out together and we parked in the parking lot of this large building. I looked up and I thought, Big outfit for such a small contract. It was only 30,000 a year. But anyway, we walked into the reception and the salesperson went up to reception and said, could she speak to the training manager? And the receptionist went white. Shaken, ashen-faced, she looked up at us and she said, he's dead. He had died 2 days previously in hospital. It was a horrifying moment. This man had been a customer of ours for many years. We knew him well. So we expressed our condolences and the salesperson was ready to walk away. And I said, things still need to be done. Perhaps we could see his superior who was out of town. So I asked for the head man, the chief information officer. And the receptionist was doubtful, but nevertheless asked, and yes, he saw us. So we walked into his office and we told him why we were there, and distractedly he said, get me that contract, I'll sign it for these people now, to his PA. But he looked more distracted than just the loss of probably a friend, certainly an employee and one of his managers. And I said, you seem concerned. What's the problem? And he said, I have this massive network going in. And now I don't know how I'm going to make it happen. So I said, is it a training problem? And he said, yes, of course. My training manager's been in hospital. He's been sick for weeks and months. And now he's died. And I don't know how we can handle this. So I said, maybe we can help. The upshot of that incident is that we walked out of that company with a contract worth 3.2 million rand per year, not 30,000. 100 times the expectations of the salesperson. That is what myopia can do. It can steal 99% of your dreams. Let's look at the second one. Cataracts. Now, in real life, cataracts affect older people. It blurs the lenses of your eyes so you become all unfocused. In sales terms, it often happens to people who are not doing very well. And at this time, it's really tough to do very well with our economic problems. And so instead of focusing on our sales where we know we're good, we rush all around the place trying to find some kind of person to sell to. And the buyers sense that and they don't buy from us. Very dangerous. Let me give you another illustration. One of my clients were in this position where they were unfocused. They had a very nice IT system, but they were fighting giants who were crushing them. And so we looked at their strategy and we found that they had quite a high number of electronics and electrical manufacturers in their client list. And they understood that industry. They knew the terminology and everything. So we rebranded them as specialists in that field. And we narrowed down the whole universe of all of the manufacturers in the country from everyone to just over 300 manufacturers in that field. And having cut out 95% of our potential business in manufacturing, what do you think happened to that company? They trebled their turnover. Trebled. They could have lost 200% potential turnover had we not made that change. That's what lack of focus can do to you. And there's simple solutions to all of these things. You could learn to focus. You could learn to look further ahead. The third one is macular degeneration. What I have, I've got holes in the middle of my vision, and I need to explain just how the eye-brain connection works, because it affects even sales vision. So the eye says the camera, it sends back thousands of HD images a second to the brain, and the brain has to process them, but it has to take away a lot of irrelevancies. So it chucks away anything that it thinks is irrelevant. And that's why a lot of advertising is ineffective, because the eye sees it, sends it back to the brain says, nah, doesn't apply to us, chuck. And the advertising's dead. But more importantly, it also fills in gaps. So everyone has little minute gaps in their sight, and the brain simply fills in from the surrounds that gap. I have great big gaps in my sight. So I could be looking at a road and my eye sends an image back to my brain which says there's a road ahead, but the whole central part of my vision is not there. And the brain says, we don't accept gaps. So it neatly fills in a road for me. And while I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that I'm looking at an empty road. And I could step off the curb in front of a speeding car that I haven't seen. But more importantly, I could look at a table full of money, and because it's right in front of me, I wouldn't see the money. My brain would just fill in a nice plain tabletop, and I would walk by never having known there was a pile of money for me. Let me give you a different example of how this can affect people. I'm a counselor for a crisis line. And one evening, I got a call from a gentleman who is in very bad shape. He'd been a hugely wealthy, successful business person, great family, great job, everything working for him, but an alcoholic. And finally, the alcohol had got to him, and he had lost his job. And then he had lost his house and his cars and his other possessions. And then his family didn't want anything more to do with him. And he'd lost everything, and finally he'd lost his self-respect. And he'd become little more than a tramp, moving from town to town. He was then in a small town, living in very poor circumstances, near the edge of a large informal settlement. And he phoned because he realized that life was just too much for him. He was not going to continue. He was going to take his own life. And while we talked, he was fashioning a noose from a piece of wire that he'd found. And somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I said to him, tell me about a time when you were happy, where you were wealthy, where you were successful, expecting him to tell me about his business career or his family. But he answered, tomatoes. Tomatoes? How incongruous. And he told me that he could grow the best tomatoes ever. Big, juicy, red tomatoes. So tasty. And there was a reflective pause between us. And then he said, why am I not growing tomatoes? He said, there are hundreds of starving people just next door to me. I could be feeding them. And he set off on this journey to grow tomatoes. Now I will forever be indebted to this gentleman for teaching me 3 life lessons. The first one is always reach out. There's always someone to listen, to advise, to help. The second one is don't quit. However bad the circumstances are, there are often answers around the edges. And the third and most important one is that you won't find the solution to your problems by looking at the big problem in the room. And particularly right now, the big problem in the room is coronavirus and the lockdown and the economy. Look around it. Ignore the elephant in the room. So there you have it. 3 virtual eye diseases. myopia, cataracts, and macular degeneration, all of whom can steal your sales dreams. And those are too important to let that happen. Don't let those dream stealers take away your success. And the bad thing about it is that sometimes we don't even know we have these eye diseases. Like the first lady in the example that I quoted, where she would have walked out of that building with a 30,000 Rand contract and been very happy, not realizing that 99% of her dreams lay in ashes at her feet. Don't let that happen to you. If you need to, go and visit your sales optometrist. Get checked out. You might need some virtual contact lenses, but don't let the dream stealers take it all away from you.